North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly, truthfully, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. I make commentary. That's not news. That is my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And that's why we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. As we come to this broadcast, we have news that seems, what's the word? Interesting from a timing standpoint, which is more than one word. Let's get into it. Attorney General Merrick Garland today, moments ago in fact, named a special counsel to investigate the entirety of the criminal probe into the unlawful retention of national defense information at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. This according to Fox News. Garland appointed former Justice Department official Jack Smith to the role. He is a former assistant U.S. attorney and chief of the DOJ's Public Integrity Section. He will oversee the investigation into Trump's retention of classified documents after leaving the White House and whether the former president obstructed the federal government's investigation into that matter. Smith also is tasked with overseeing the investigation into whether Trump or other officials and entities interfered with the peaceful transfer of power during the 2020 presidential election, including the certification of the Electoral College vote, January 6th, 2021. The quote from the Attorney General is, "It is in the public interest to appoint a special prosecutor to independently manage an investigation and prosecution based on recent developments, including President Trump's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well," unquote. He clarified that when it came to the investigation into January 6th, Smith would not be handling the investigation or prosecution of Trump supporters that breached the U.S. Capitol. Rather, Smith would focus on whether President Trump or individuals and entities had tried to obstruct the peaceful transfer of power. FBI agents seized classified records from former President Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago during the agency's unprecedented raid August 8th. It included some marked as top secret, according to a warrant and property receipt. A warrant signed by U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart. That's interesting. Okay, I'll get back to that later. A warrant signed by U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart gave agents the authorities to seize all physical documents and records constituting evidence, contraband, fruits of crime, or other items illegally possessed in violation of U.S. code, including documents with classification markings and presidential records created between January 20th, 2017 and January 20th, 2021. In short, the entire presidential term of former President Donald Trump. According to the property receipt, FBI agents took approximately 20 boxes of items from the premises, including one set of documents marked as, quote, various classified TS-SCI documents, unquote, which refer to top secret sensitive compartmented information. Records covered by the government classification could include human intelligence, and information, if disclosed, could jeopardize relations between the U.S. and other nations, as well as the lives of intelligence operatives abroad. However, classification also encompasses national security information related to the daily operations of the President of the United States. The government conducted the search in response to what it believes to be a violation of federal laws 18 U.S. Code 793, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, 18 U.S.C. 2071, concealment, removal, or mutilation, and 18 U.S. Code 1519, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. The allegation of gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information falls under the Espionage Act. The former president and his team, though, are disputing the classification and believe the information and records to have been declassified. This is according to Brooke Singman, who wrote this article. Like I said, this just happened moments ago. One little bit, we analyze news for fact and bias. And I have to point this out. The initial warrant was signed by U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart. He is not a U.S. magistrate judge. He is a U.S. magistrate. That's different. I don't know why they throw that word in there, except that to me it points out bias. Bias against President Trump by Fox News. And so all I can say is that once again, there seems to be another political attack on President Trump. Let me move over here when I talk about that. So the timing of this is kind of suspicious. In my view, this comes immediately after the Republicans had a very serious news conference yesterday where they accused President Joe Biden of fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, influence buying, and a host of other infractions of American law. And suddenly now we have a special prosecutor named to investigate Donald Trump again. Now, I am looking at all of this and I'm trying to figure out just exactly what this special prosecutor is supposed to do. In my view, it seems like it's supposed to do just exactly what the Mueller investigation did against President Trump, which is to constantly distract, pull attention and money resources away from the president, and essentially chase him down for something that, once again, they had better be able to prove, or it will only strengthen President Trump. One of the officials from the Wall Street Journal made that exact point moments ago on Fox News. This is not something that I believe is advisable, but I do understand why it happened. Why would this be the way they go about this? Politics. Once again, the DOJ apparently not learning anything about dabbling in politics when you are a legal entity, when you're a federal law enforcement entity. It seems like for whatever reason, these people will not understand that when it comes right down to all of this, when it comes down to chasing President Trump around and so on, that it is not hurting the president. Now, if they're able somehow to push this through into some kind of an indictment, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? Are they truly going to determine that President Donald Trump is guilty of some infraction of the Espionage Act, all of these U.S. codes that they're apparently going to be chasing, when all of those documents were guarded by the Secret Service? How is that going to work? How are they going to be able to rationalize what they are trying to do with President Trump vis-a-vis these particular documentary issues when nothing happened to Hillary Clinton? And Hillary Clinton was certainly not protected by presidential privilege. There are presidents who have top secret SCI material in their possession that are no longer in office right to this moment. Are they going to go back and start chasing all of these other ones? Is that what they're going to do? They're going to chase all these other presidents down? Or are the other presidents now scrubbing all their records to make sure that all that stuff is gone, or at least returned to the National Archives? If indeed all this other material is gone and returned to the National Archives, will we ever hear about it? Once again, I don't understand why it is that after being burned so many times, both the DOJ and the FBI continue to pursue a political end using law enforcement as a tool. This is deeply disturbing to me. How about to you? What does this mean to you? Telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Is this Back to the Future? Are we now looking at the new Mueller investigation? Do you believe that there is some there? I don't believe so. Certainly when it comes to attempting to try to disrupt the Electoral College vote on January 6th. How is this investigation going to rationalize the fact that already in the public records, President Trump said, "Take me to the Capitol," and was refused by Secret Service personnel? That clearly shows intent to try to get control of the situation. Certainly that's what his defense team is going to say. What is he going to do? What is he going to walk on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives and stop the proceedings? Hardly. He's going to give those people something else to do besides mill around in the Capitol building and fall into what was an easily avoidable trap. I look at all of this, and by the way, in case you're wondering, one of the Oath Keeper leaders said that her actions on that day were absolutely stupid. We'll have more about that coming up a little bit later on here on this broadcast. And so what we have is is this another political tit for tat? Is that what we're doing? And if so, why is the DOJ involved? Why is the DOJ involved? Now, obviously, there's a circumstance whereby, okay, there's already a January 6th committee that sort of just lingers out there like some kind of strange vulture looking to try to find another morsel of food from an already bleach-bared carcass of an issue or a set of issues that really went nowhere, especially when you consider the fact that due process was not extended to the President of the United States during that entire situation? What are we doing here? Since when do we, the people of the United States, find ourselves in a position where one of our federal law enforcement entities is chasing down a former president for things that are relatively easily explained? All of these materials that they're talking about from Mar-a-Lago, jumping back to that, all these materials from Mar-a-Lago at some level are protected documents protected by presidential privilege. If we're looking to change presidential privilege, once again, that takes us back to the realm of politics. And politics has to work through, okay, what is presidential privilege? What are the exact parameters of presidential privilege? And once they pass that law, and assuming it's signed by, say, for example, President Biden, will all the other presidents, certainly in possession of these SCITS circumstances, these documents, immediately turn them back in? There is no way that you could be the President of the United States with all of the information that comes to you and all of the information that is documented and in your possession, then many of these documents that they possess are not classified at some level, including TSSCI. And I keep going back to this situation where Hillary Clinton didn't have to face any of this. Hillary Clinton didn't have to face a thing. As a matter of fact, the director of the FBI came up and said, well, she was just stupid. She did not have the intent. Well, okay. What does that mean? Is that not something that President Trump's defense could say? Well, he was unaware that he had those documents in the first place. All of this is unfortunate writ large. It looks like it's rushed because at the end of the statement, Merrick Garland turned on his heel and walked away. Not a single press question was asked. And what question would that be? Well, I could say this, Mr. Attorney General, when you have possession of these documents, et cetera, and you have these in the way that you have these, is there not something here that is absolutely missing from a standpoint of A, using the DOJ again as a political tool? What would he answer? Oh, no, there's no politics. Really? How could it possibly be thought of otherwise? This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. The Attorney General of the United States has appointed a special counsel to chase down Donald Trump on interference with the Electoral College votes on January 6th and his handling of materials in his possession at Mar-a-Lago. A special prosecutor named. There's another problem with this special prosecutor naming, and that is, why isn't there a special prosecutor chasing down Hunter Biden? And all of that. How come there isn't a special prosecutor chasing down Joe Biden, as a matter of fact, for all of that? For all the things that, all of these issues. There's actual documented evidence. Actual documented evidence that was submitted to the FBI that has Biden's name all over it. Why isn't there a special prosecutor for that? This proves definitively the DOJ is a political organization operating at the behest of the Democrat Party. And it's getting perilously close to selective prosecution of someone they don't want running for president in 2024. What do you think? Let's go to the chat room. Beth Ann says, hi. She's from Indiana. Hello, Beth. You're probably freezing to death and buried under snow. Try to stay warm as best you can. Let's see who else. Gary asks, hey, man, how'd the gig go last night? I played drums for the traditional blues band at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas last night. I played better. I had a good time. I really enjoyed it, actually. I had a wonderful time. And by the way, Jessie showed up with both of her children, Easton and Dex, and I was very, very happy that they showed up. Outstanding. Let's see. Gary goes on to say they're still conjuring up stuff on President Trump. We've got real goods on Biden. Well, real goods have been alleged. Gary says the DOJ and FBI are weaponized for the left, the American Gestapo, and then evokes a minister from the old Soviet Union that says, show us the guy and we will invent the crime. That's not exactly a quote, but it's close. The simple case of this is that they are indeed investigating the crimes and seeing if they can apply them to President Trump. And basic legal precedents, and what has heretofore been a badly defined set of parameters for executive privilege and presidential privilege, that still hasn't been defined. And the reason is because up until President Trump, it was unnecessary. It was absolutely unnecessary. Presidents of the United States have as high a security clearance as you can possibly have. They are the arbiter of what is secure and what is not. I mean, they can have that material just based on that. Okay, well, what about need to know? Well, he's a former president of the United States. He's dealing with historic documents at this point. He has a need to know. It's just crazy. Let's see what else. Poker says they want to taint Mr. Trump in order to keep him from running for president. I don't think that's going to work, and I don't think it matters to the people that would vote for President Trump. Beth Ann from Indiana says, fed up with the attacks on a man who truly helped, who tried to help and got denied. Well, he wasn't denied. As a matter of fact, he did very, very well and accomplished a lot of things. It's like the FBI, Eddie says, it's like FBI grass drills against political rivals. I don't know what else you could say. They point out that the Clintons are Teflon. It's frustrating. Intent is a key word here. Well, yeah, but once again, isn't intent basically another word for thought crime? Let's see what else. Let's see. Okay, I don't know what he was talking about there. Muzzleloader time is coming up. What happened to Beer Man? Okay. All right. So a lot of this stuff, the conservative house is focusing on Brandon more than Hunter. The left will feed us Hunter low-hanging fruit. I suppose so. Merrick Garland belongs in prison himself, says Poker. The selective prosecution of Mr. Trump is insanity. I have to agree. They better stop. They're going to guarantee that he wins in 2024. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you appreciate this show, if you find any value in it at all, pass it along to your friends. This is a grassroots movement as we try to bring you the news, the real news, in a fair and balanced way. It's what we try to do here. If you find value in that, please pass it along to your friends. Please subscribe on the platform that you're watching. And also, by all means, please do, if you choose to support us financially, do so by going to patreon.com/The Wells Report. Patreon.com/The Wells Report. Patreon.com/The Wells Report for $1 a month. It's easy. $1 a month, $2 a month, something like that. Help me out a lot. I sure would appreciate it. Thanks very much for your consideration of that request. So, a few things going on here. Let me get back to the chat room here. Buddy says they're going after Trump. As simple as that. President Obama's documents are locked up in an abandoned warehouse. I guarantee you go through any of those, you're going to find TSSCI documents. They're historic. Are they unclassified? Probably. But the thing about it is, who cares? Who cares? These documents were under the guard of the Secret Service. Good heavens to Betsy. Poker says that Merrick Garland is a leftist hack. You are correct. It's all political. Seems like it. Let's see. Censure and impeachments have been nothing to have been turned to nothing land. Eddie, I think what he's saying is that censure and impeachment has essentially amounted to nothing, which is true. Jess says, I think this reaction makes it clear that the initial people are political in nature and they only care about their agenda. True, up to and including not caring how dumb they look. This is dumb. Hoping all this makes things, hoping all this making things up backfires on the left when we get to President Biden's family jewels in an apparent investigation. Yeah, this is a self-inflicted wound by the left. They are making huge mistakes here. I mean, politically and certainly legally, how is the DOJ ever going to be able to shake the idea that it's simple political prosecution is the rule of the day? How are they going to do this? This does not help. This does not help. Let's see. Hope this witch hunt on Trump backfires when we secure President Biden's information. The Bidens are not as slick as the Clintons. Well, we'll see. Let's see what else. If you're a Democrat who yells rule of law about January 6th, yet you agree with Schumer and amnesty for 11 million illegal aliens, then shut your pie hole, hypocrites. Well, yeah, there's that. Let's see. Speaking of rule of law, I've got something on that for you. The Democrats, Poker says the Democrats use the rule of law as a weapon to persecute their political enemies. Otherwise, they don't give a damn about the law, the Constitution, the country, or the people. They are political sociopaths. They are. They absolutely are. And then Eddie says, thanks for suffering with my writing. It's okay, man. It's okay. I spent a lot of time covering President George W. Bush. He had similar issues. So there's an op-ed piece by Jill Lawrence today in USA Today. It is a purely partisan screed. Okay. However, it does point out something that once again is the left shooting itself in the foot under the auspices of USA Today. And it goes like this. Here's the headline. If our political and legal systems worked, there wouldn't be a Donald Trump 2024 campaign. She says there's no more definitive indictment of the U.S. legal and political systems than Donald Trump's entry into the 2024 presidential race a week after his big lie candidates crushed Republican hopes and dreams nationwide. Hardly. Over 200 of them were elected. What are you doing? I mean, you'd think by now there'd be another way to use words, Trump and indictment in the same sentence, but no. Well, obviously, you're hoping that the former actually agrees. In other words, you're hoping that there is an indictment. Okay, you can indict a ham sandwich. You're going to do that? And to what end? To just remove President Trump, the probably the most dangerous political candidate for the left that they have to deal with, not just from a standpoint of who he is and what he's done, but what he would do if he was given another presidential term. Good heavens. You are going to see leftist bodies being thrown around in just fragmented. The left will be fragmented if Donald Trump wins again. And they know it. They are fighting for their very lives, at least as far as they know. Anyway, so what I point out about this is, once again, back to the headline, if our political and legal systems worked, there wouldn't be a Donald Trump 2024 campaign. Excuse me, Ms. Lawrence, but if our political and legal systems worked, there would not be a Biden administration. There wouldn't be a Biden administration. There simply wouldn't. How is it that you find yourself in a position where you would make a statement like that when President Biden is in deep, deep trouble? He's in deep trouble. And there's no excuse for it. I mean, Terry Bobulinski presented all of this information to the FBI 2 years ago. What's happening? I mean, is this more panic? Is that what we're seeing here? Is this all about panic? There's no inhabitable land left to sail and start over. Too bad there's no atmosphere on the moon. We stay on Earth. We send them to the moon someday, Alice. Well, yeah. That's an allusion to the honeymooners, and I suppose. But I look at this and I'm going, are you truly and verily sure about this? Let's see what else. This was interesting. I was pointing out how dumb it was that January 6th even happened. If I had been there, I would have told those people, stay out of the police perimeter. Do not go in there. You don't have to. You simply don't have to. A high-ranking member of the extremist group Oath Keepers told they say it's an extremist group. Okay, if you say so. It's police officers and former people that issued oaths that they followed. They walked the walk of their oaths to defend and to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, anyway. She said in court this week that she was stupid for invading the Capitol on January 6th. A Senate Homeland Security panel says the FBI and DHS are failing on domestic extremism. And in Arizona, by the way, domestic extremism, it depends on what you define as domestic extremism. I've got a little bit of a piece of news there that you might be interested in. Meanwhile, a Senate Homeland Security's panel has said the FBI and the DHS are failing on domestic extremism. And it's here in this article. In Arizona, election denier and Donald Trump stalwart Kari Lake is refusing to acknowledge she lost the election for governor. Is that extremism? I mean, now we're going through the looking glass here. So extremism now is a political candidate, very much like Stacey Abrams, for example, who is doubting the results of the election that she apparently lost, according to all the people that are fighting as hard as possible to prove that she definitively lost the gubernatorial election in Arizona. Okay, so that's extremism? Yeah, we're using an overly broad definition for extremism and therefore destroying actual extremism. When you couple that with the fact that BLM protesters aren't called extremists, where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? But I think it's fascinating that an Oath Keeper is saying, yeah, going into there, well, that was really stupid. It was really stupid. It was really stupid. I said so. And I got to be honest with you, all they did was fall into a leftist trap. And were ably assisted, apparently, by the D.C. police who opened up the barricades. Don't go in there. You're close enough. If you can see the Capitol building, you're close enough. And by the way, I have a little bit of experience in that. I went to Washington, D.C., and I stood on, I believe it was the east lawn of the Capitol, and I shouted at him. I told him to stop. This was years and years and years ago. I told him to stop. Stop trying to run off with the United States of America. I did this. It was almost flawless. I recorded it. It was almost flawless. It lasted about 10 minutes. People stopped and listened. People applauded when I was done. But I didn't get within anywhere close to being in the Capitol. The last time I was close enough in the Capitol, I was walking the halls of Congress like I owned the place, and nobody said a word to me. Of course, they knew who I was, but the thing about it is that I literally walked into a secure area. And I said, am I supposed to be here, to a security guy? And he says, don't worry about it. There's the exit. And I left. I mean, simple. It's basic. It's real. Just because you can do a thing like go into the Capitol building if you want to, or mill about on the terrace of the Capitol if you want to, don't flipping do it. We have a rule in the House. You've heard me say it several times. No ammo. In other words, don't hand ammo to your enemies. No ammo. Don't do it. Anyway, just thought I'd put that out there for whatever it was worth. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see, on the chat room. I was a police officer and a sergeant for nearly 30 years in the Dallas Metroplex. I upheld my oath daily. Watching the DOJ and FBI put the law into the shredder sickens me. And also the no bail craziness. And Mike R. and Gary said, thank you for your service, Poker. Poker, thank you for keeping us safe. God bless you. God bless you. Let's see what else. Anything else? Defund the police movement. Leftist DAs, no bail, will destroy the country unless people stand up against it. I don't know that it'll destroy the country, but it'll make it a lot of people a lot less safe and probably cost a bunch of people their lives. So there you go. Moving on. President Biden today asked the Supreme Court of the United States. He filed an emergency appeal today asking the justices to intervene in a months-long legal dispute over a $400 billion student loan forgiveness program that has been put on hold by two federal courts. The administration filed its request days after the St. Louis-based U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit sided with a group of conservative states that have argued the Department of Education officials exceeded their authority with the program. Most assuredly, they did. The president cannot hand out $400 billion. That is the job of Congress. In point of fact, they have a lame duck session. They could pass this, they could codify it into law, and they could put it on the president's desk in 90 days, or 60 days, sorry. They could do that if they wanted to. Why don't they? I'll tell you why, because they won't get it passed. But that would stop all of this. Now the Supreme Court of the United States has to waste its time absolutely thinking one way or another, do we uphold the idea that there are checks and balances and that the executive branch does not get to hand out money? That's only the legislative branch, specifically the House of Representatives. It's like the rules just simply do not apply. They simply don't apply. And all of this wasted time and all of this noise and all this dirt in the air and all this mudslinging and so on is driving the people's trust and belief in their government into the ditch. Just my opinion. A U.S. district judge in Texas also halted the program in a separate lawsuit. The Eighth Circuit erroneous injection. The Eighth Circuit's erroneous injunction leaves millions of economically vulnerable borrowers in limbo, uncertain about the size of their debt, unable to make financial decisions with an accurate understanding of their future repayment obligations. This, according to U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, who represents the federal government at the Supreme Court. You put your name on the paper. You said that you were going to take this grant or this loan or what have you and pay back this grant or loan or what have you. The government is not going to bail you out. They're simply not going to do it. It wasn't an erroneous injunction. The Eighth Circuit did what the Eighth Circuit should have done, upheld the Constitution of the United States, which takes us right back to Oath Keepers being decided as some kind of extremist group. Really? The administration asked the Supreme Court to end the lower court injunction, which would bring it one step closer to reviving the program while litigation continues. The 6 states, by the way, involved are Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina. They argue the administration lacks the authority to forgive student loan debt. The states asserted they would be financially harmed by canceling billions in student loan debt as well. Isn't it fascinating? All these people that were elected in 2020, they were elected by people that forget that when you elect these people that theoretically represent something that is attractive at some level, in other words, getting rid of that evil Trump in favor of Joe Biden, they forget about all the garbage that comes with that decision. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. The chat room is available to you. You can find that on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. By the way, if you're watching on Rumble or Patreon, this broadcast was recorded earlier today. And so send me an email if you want to get in touch. And that is thewellsreport@frontier.com. The Wells Report at frontier.com, and make sure you put the name of the platform that you are watching in the subject line of the email so I know it's you. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. All right, so I point out bias whenever I see it in the news, and I have a gem here. I absolutely do. Fox News is reporting that President Biden's regular trips to his home state of Delaware have cost taxpayers at least $11 million since the start of his presidency. Why President Biden has made 57 trips to Delaware spanning all or part of 185 days. This, according to data from former CBS correspondent Mark Knoller. The trips require taxpayer dollars to fund costs associated with the use of either Air Force One or Marine One, as well as security costs for the Secret Service. The president spends time in Delaware at his homes in Wilmington and Rehoboth Beach. Most of the trips involve direct travel between the White House and Delaware. Biden has made 101 flights between the White House or Joint Base Andrews and Delaware, 71 flights using Marine One, 30 using Air Force One. For decades, Mark Knoller has kept careful records of various White House statistics and has served as a source of information for reporters, even the White House itself. Public documents from the Department of Defense Comptroller show that Marine One helicopters used by the president cost between $17,065 and $20,206 per hour. The helicopter trip between the White House and locations in Delaware roughly takes an hour, according to the president's schedule. Then they go on to say the Air Force One's operational costs are $177,843 per hour. The trip to Delaware takes 30 minutes. Okay. So when George W. Bush played golf and traveled around the country playing golf, I didn't care. When President Obama sent First Lady Michelle Obama and his daughters to New York on Air Force One to go see a Broadway show, I didn't care. I just don't care. Donald Trump playing golf and doing whatever he did, et cetera, on Air Force One, I don't care. When it comes to President Biden taking Air Force One or Marine One to Delaware, I don't care. The money that they're talking about is spent anyway. It's not like that it's some sort of huge expense that we have to worry about in a nation that's $31.8 trillion in national debt. The President of the United States is an incredibly difficult job, and it requires getting away from it a lot. And besides, if say, for example, you're a partisan, right? The more time that President Biden spends away from the White House, the better. Don't you think? Is it worth that investment? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can't mess with the presidents when they get away from the job for a while. It's okay. It's all right. If they use Air Force One, fine. We shouldn't care. But Fox News is, I would say, trying to gin something up against President Biden to create consternation based on what? The only thing that I can think of that makes this anywhere close to veracity, I suppose, is if it was a slow news day and you don't have anything better to report. Fortunately, this is not a slow news day. There's a lot of things to report, but we just have to go out there and we have got to point out the fact that the president actually flies home and it costs money. Whatevs. Come on, leave the president alone. Believe me, if you were, say, for example, the CEO of a wealthy corporation and you happen to have a corporate jet available and you were going to go on vacation, what would you do? You'd take the corporate jet, especially if it was one of your privileges. Of course you would. Especially you, because you, like me, don't care about my carbon footprint. Since my foot is made of carbon, it would be a carbon footprint now, wouldn't it? This is stupid. And I know, well, John, if it was stupid and if it was a waste of ink, why did you read it? because I wanted to make sure that you understood that bias grows everywhere. It's unwelcome, it's unnecessary, it's foolish and ridiculous. Why do we do it? You know, the American people are really smart. The American people are incredibly intelligent. All you got to do is give them the story, and the people that you want to, I don't know, coerce are already coerced. They'll read the facts and they'll say, my God, that's a terrible waste of taxpayer money. And the people that don't think so, they'll go, leave the president alone. People like me, I don't care. My apathyometer is pegged. This is the Wells Report, back with more coming up, and hour number 2 next. Isn't that just nuts? That is just flipping crazy. Back in a minute. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, truthfully, fairly. We point out fact and bias. We do the analysis of the news and point those things out because you need to know. Regardless of where the bias comes from, bias in the news is bad. I make commentary. That's not the news. That's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. And we do it for 3 hours, Monday through Friday, right here on this particular platform on which you watch. And thanks very much for doing so. Before I go any further, I made a mistake on Monday. And I want to clarify it and clear it up right this very minute. If you have watched this broadcast for any length of time, you know that there is a group of people that exist in the state of Oklahoma. It is the Oklahoma Department of Justice. One of my dear friends, I've known Kelly for 45 years. 45 years? No, 41 years. Sorry. I've known Kelly for 41 years. And Kelly works at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. And one day she was listening to the broadcast and people came in and said, "Hey, what you listening to?" Before we knew it, there's about 100 people that listen to this broadcast every single day as time has gone by. There have been other people that have been able to set it up so the Oklahoma Department of Transportation can hear this broadcast through the 5 buildings they have on their campus. And one of those persons is Sylvia. Sylvia celebrated a birthday on the 14th day of November, year of our Lord 2022. That was last Monday. I was planning on saying something back then, but you know. And so what happened was I wanted to make darn sure that everybody knew a couple of different things. First of all, the people that watch this broadcast are a family. And it means a lot to me that people gather to hear this broadcast. We don't see them on Facebook very much. We don't see them because they're working. We don't see them on Facebook and we don't see them on some of the platforms and so on and so forth. But they donate to this broadcast every single month, or every single paycheck, like clockwork. And I cannot thank them enough. And I cannot thank Sylvie enough for making sure that all those people at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation get to hear this broadcast. Sylvie, happy birthday. God bless you, and thank you so much for being such a great supporter of the Wells Report. It means a lot to me, and I wanted to make sure that we stop for a moment and thanked you personally and wished you a very, very happy birthday. Last hour, by the way, we also somebody also brought up the fact that I played a drum gig last night with a traditional blues band at the Dream Tacos in Bedford. We had a great crowd there. We had just a wonderful time. It was actually pretty good. The people stayed. They listened to the music, and it was fun. I was playing drums. Jesse showed up and brought Dex and Easton, her children, and there were just a lot of kids there running around and playing and really enjoying it. And I wanted to thank the people from Dream Tacos and of course the traditional blues band for letting me have a piece of that. It was fun. And it went really well. So at some point, I will be as good as the favor being given me to play with this band. I practice every day, and I will continue to. So anyway, that was just a little bit of personal business that I wanted to get back to. There is news from the political front, specifically in Colorado. It appears as though Democrat Adam Frisch has announced today that he called GOP Representative Lauren Boebert and conceded the race for Colorado's 3rd congressional district. Although there will be an automatic recount done by the Colorado Secretary of State's office, Frisch said in a live Facebook speech he did not ask for a recount, does not expect the results to change, and does not want there to be fundraising done for an essentially fruitless cause. Here's what he said, quote, "The likelihood of this recount changing more than a handful of votes is very small, very, very small. It would be disingenuous and unethical for us or any other group to continue to raise false hope and encourage fundraising for a recount," said Frisch. He went on to say, Colorado elections are safe, accurate, and secure. Please save your money for your groceries, your rent, your children, and for other important causes and organizations. I just got off the phone with Representative Boebert. I called her to formally concede this election. Boebert acknowledged today that she had received Frisch's concession call, tweeting, I look forward to getting past election season and focusing on conservative governance in the House majority. Time to get to work. As of this morning, with almost all the votes tallied, Boebert led Frisch by 551 votes in what had been considered a safely Republican Western Colorado district. In Colorado, any race decided by a margin that's 0.5% or less of the votes earned by the top finisher is automatically recounted. The current margin of 551 votes is about 0.34% of Boebert's 163,758 votes. I want to thank Adam Frisch. That was a classy move. That was well done. It was 551 votes. There's a political future for you somewhere, and I hope you find it, and I hope that's what you want, and I hope that you move forward in your career. I also hope that you don't get caught up in this leftist craziness that seems to believe that the government of the United States, the government of the United States is a plaything for the ruling class. I hope you show the same kind of caring for your fellow citizens regarding their groceries, rent, children, important causes and organizations. I hope you continue to work that particular statement, and I hope you continue your career. And good luck to you, sir. And thanks very much. That was nice. It was a good move. It was a classy move. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the USA Today newspaper has come up with three takeaways from the election so far. In the November 8th midterm election, Senator Raphael Warnock edged out Herschel Walker in the vote count for a U.S. Senate seat, but Libertarian Chase Oliver took 2% of the vote, enough to keep either candidate from a majority. Because neither major party candidate managed to claim a majority, a Georgia U.S. Senate seat will be decided by runoff election for the third time in 2 years. Voters will return to the polls on December 6th. Now, these are the takeaways. Early voting was strong, with about 2.5 million voters between in-person and absentee ballots. The final day of the early vote exceeded not only the 2018 turnout, but even the final day of the 2020 presidential election, according to the Secretary of State's office. Election numbers dipped on Election Day, however. The total vote count for 2022 in the gubernatorial race was about 3.9 million, nearly the same total number as the governor's race in 2018. Almost 40% of white registered voters voted early. 36% of black voters voted early across the state. County totals are available from Election Day, but age, race, and gender data has not yet been published by the Secretary of State's office. Let's see, that is takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, those voters who did come out on Election Day did not favor Democrat candidates statewide. Gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams fell well short of incumbent Republican Governor Brian Kemp, losing by 300,000 votes, and that trend continued for all the state constitutional offices. Warnock, though, ended up with about 131,000 more votes than Abrams and approximately 35,000 votes ahead of Herschel Walker. Meanwhile, Walker lagged Kemp by about 200,000 votes. So while Democrat turnout disappointed overall, Warnock benefited from split-ticket voters. Now, the other thing about that is the Libertarian candidate would certainly siphon off voters from the Republican candidate. They go on to say in this article that runoff elections are usually much lower turnout and generally favor Republicans. And so we'll see. And then the third takeaway was this: heading into the election, Georgia was one of a handful of states with competitive Senate races, a 100-member chamber divided equally among those in the election, in contests that would determine majority control of the chamber, which the Democrat Party won. They have at least 50 seats, and so they will, with the vote of Vice President Kamala Harris, be able to retain control of the U.S. Senate. The big picture outlook was cited by many voters in exit polls as a reason for how they cast their ballots in the Georgia race. Voters uncomfortable with Walker or Warnock overlooked their shortcomings in the interest of promoting a party to power. The trend was a repeat of the 2020 runoffs. Warnock and Ossoff's wins 2 years ago that gave the Democrats a majority. And so, once again, there will be a runoff. It will be happening December 6th. And while the control of the Senate is not up for grabs, there will be one Senate seat, which will bring parity to the chamber yet again if Herschel Walker wins, or be a bragging point for Democrats saying that in the elections, they were able to defy the odds and actually increase the seats in the U.S. Senate. That's all this election is for, aside, of course, from the people of Georgia getting to decide who they would like to have represent them. All right. So that's the latest. That's the latest in all of this. There are some other seats. The House of Representatives, as you know, is already decided. The Republicans will take over the chamber on January 3rd, 2023. And if they actually live up to their statements, which is something I talked about at lunch today, if they actually live up to their statements, we ought to see some things that probably ought to be taken care of. And once again, that's not a partisan statement. It is not. It's just that every now and then, one political party will go off the chain, if you want to say it that way. They'll go off the chain and they'll do something ridiculous, and then there will be retribution from the other party and so on and so forth until there is a peaceful outcome of, okay, you hit us in the face, we hit you in the face, you hit us in the face, we hit you in the face, let's stop hitting each other in the face, which would be a very good thing. Stop hitting each other in the face. All you're doing is damaging the United States government and the people's viewpoint of the United States government. Politics is becoming a bad rash. I think it's more like shingles. It's just something that yeah, you do your absolute best to prevent yourself from having a case of, but at some point, if you've had it, well, you've got it. And if that's the case, it's coming back. And that happens about every 2 years. And these people have got to start doing things for the American people. And that's not just the Republican Party, it's the Democrat Party as well. They have to stop all this bickering and infighting and garbage. Now, that doesn't mean that they should reach across the aisle of bipartisan good Christian fellowship. No, that's not something they should do. Because the two-party system only works when the parties are adversarial and yet focused on a unifying principle. I dare say that to be the Constitution of the United States and Bill of Rights. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Let's see. Yeah, Poker Monkey says, that's why I love government shutdowns, although it never really shuts down, because it means they're actively harming us at that moment. There you go. Let's see. Me and my friends have identified themselves as thefted, so we're snake bit. Never let that credit card leave your sight. Okay, that's something completely different. Let's see what else. People were listening to my drum story and laughed. Oh, that's awesome, JD. Thank you very much. I really have a lot of fun with that. Drumming is good. Let's see. Alan Schaefer has made an appearance. He's a Democrat. Donald Trump's estimated vacation costs, $154.8 million. Barack Obama's estimated vacation costs, $105,700,000. What else? I don't care. But thanks very much for the stats. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Friday in progress. People have asked me where my fishing shirt is. Again, for the last couple of weeks, I have not been wearing my fishing shirt. And the reason is because it's TDC. Too dang cold. I'm wearing a sweater today, and you know why? Because I have to. All right? It's been cloudy and windy, and temperatures have been somewhere in the 40s. And when that happens in Texas, for all of us who live here, Antarctica is not that cold. All right? We are freezing our butts and other portions of our anatomy. Going to the chat room, JD, I started taking drum lessons a few years back when I retired in my 50s. It was me and a bunch of 10-year-olds at the music school. Yeah. You know what's crazy about drummers when they start doing that after they've gotten a little older? What's crazy about that is how seamlessly you fit in with the 10-year-olds. It's really, truly amazing. Let's see. Next time you play, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Drum it blues style. It's easier that way. All right, I was playing drums with a different group and had a wonderful time until the leader of the group decided to play Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And your right hand plays offbeat triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. See? And it's like, and it's not easy to play. Okay, I haven't found the trick yet, but I came close the other day. And to that is a blues shuffle beat with your bass drum. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Okay, it's not easy to play. All right. And then you throw the backbeat in there, which is on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's intriguing and it's challenging. And I've been practicing it ever since. And people are trying to find ways. Gary Absher is saying, John, just play it in blues style. Well, that's true too. I could do that too, but it's such an iconic drum part. I'd kind of like to know what it is. Mike R. talking about the Colorado Democrat congressman. Was that Adam Frisch? Yeah. Adam Frisch was very classy in his concession to Lauren Boebert. Hang on a minute about that. Anyway, and Mike says, wow, an honorable politician. Must be a mirage. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Let's see. I like to go. Okay. Drumming to our music is fun. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. By the way, Alan Schaefer points out that that it's Boebert. Alan, you know, every time I do a show and Ms. Boebert, Nicole Boebert is brought up, I always say to myself, I've got to get the pronunciation for her name. And so I use the classic pronunciation of Boebert, which is actually Babert. But for some reason, she pronounced it Boebert. Okay. And once again, I'm not able to do that. Then, by the way, Alan points out that Walker had a Gettysburg Address. I don't know whether you know, but vampires are some of the coolest people, are they not? He didn't really say that, did he? That's not going to get you elected to the United States Senate. And then Alan pointed out this. Remember, Alan's a Democrat. He says, but let me tell you something. I found out that a werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that? I never knew that, said Alan. I never knew that either. So I don't want to be a vampire anymore. I want to be a werewolf. Well, there's only one way to do that, Alan. That's to stop shaving. And the problem is every time I stop shaving, I look like Santa Claus. Yeah. There's let's see what else is going on. Let's see what else is happening. Constitution 3 has a requirement. Be 35, a natural-born American citizen and U.S. resident for 14 years. Trump meets all of them. None of this other business from the left matters. Okay. That's fine. What else? The disparity between parties, the overall view of and desired direction of this country will not soon be rectified. Correct, Mark Greer, even with the seriously formal language. The Speaker of the House does not have the power to block an order from the Commander-in-Chief. Is that the werewolf vampire thing? You know, I think you might be right. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for watching us today. I am very, very glad that you're here. If you would like to support this broadcast, please share it with your friends. If you find any value in this broadcast, share it with your friends and subscribe. By the way, once again, one of my great buddies said, hey, don't forget the likes and the thumbs ups. Make sure that you do that because that really helps. That matters. Okay, so if you haven't done that, please do. All right, and if you'd like to throw some money at the broadcast, you can. It's not expensive. It's like $1 a month. Go to patreon.com/The Wells Report and throw $1 at me. It would help me out immeasurably. Okay, let's see. Who's the latest werewolf in the movie series? Wolverine? I think that's an old one. Yeah. Marty Feldman was the best one, but he was Igor. That was a long time. The people are old on this feed today. What's going on there? By the way, I have some news. Apparently, the Department of Defense's chief diversity officer would get the boot under new legislation from Senator Marco Rubio of Florida and 9 other Republican senators. The Restoring Military Focus Act would get rid of the chief diversity officer and any senior advisors for diversity, equity, and inclusion, a move these senators say is needed to make sure the department stays focused on warfighting instead of woke diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI initiatives. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our military should be focused on protecting our national security, not promoting woke nonsense. The current direction that we're heading in is dangerous. If we don't reverse course, we risk jeopardizing military strength, national interest, and security. Without a chief diversity officer for the Pentagon, darn. I mean, okay, so yeah, that's your white privilege talking, John. Whatever. I just find the whole thing to be a waste of time, and apparently so does Marco Rubio and 6 other senators. So it was a horrible attack. Paul Pelosi was apparently minding his own business at his house when David DePape decided to break in and hit him in the head with a hammer. Okay? And what ended up happening after that was odd. And it continues to be odd. And the reason it's odd is as follows. Following the attack, there were some huge discrepancies of the attack that were first reported between what was first reported by the mainstream media and then by the police report that followed that reporting when it became public. Apparently, Paul Pelosi answered the door. Now, this would be easy to determine. Just get your hands on the police uniform videos. They're all wearing a camera. They're wearing individual cameras. All you got to do is just get a hold of those and see who answered the door. But we haven't seen that stuff yet. Don't know why. Why wouldn't we? And really, when it comes right down to it, we know a couple of things did happen. Paul Pelosi, David DePape was in the house, and Paul Pelosi got hit with a hammer by, apparently, David DePape. Okay, pretty straightforward. Nobody would really care, except, of course, that Nancy Pelosi and the mainstream media decided that it was the result of action by MAGA Republican extremists, which makes it a completely different kettle of fish. Because at some point, even lying about 74 million people you don't know, apparently that is a case of concern. And I agree. I mean, I don't know what was going on between David DePape and Paul Pelosi. And I don't think that any of us do know. All I know is that David DePape has indeed pled not guilty. That means there's going to be a trial. Unless, of course, David DePape is somehow coerced in some way, shape, or form. Oh, wait, I used the wrong camera. To take a plea bargain and make the whole thing go away. But again, I have to ask this. Why? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, MAGA Republicans have been accused of everything, including being Nazis and terrorists and crazy people and bigots and all. I mean, you know, I just keep looking at this and I'm going, why? But this story will not go away. And the reason it won't go away is because of further reporting on the story. Miguel Almaguer, who was an NBC reporter, reported the discrepancies that I just described to you. That report actually saw the light of day for about one particle of one day. And then it was immediately removed by NBC, saying it just doesn't live up to journalistic standards. Which, of course, begs the question, what journalistic standards? Which, specifically, what journalistic standards did this report not comport to? No response from NBC. None. Again, why? Yesterday, we reported that a local NBC affiliate reported essentially the same story. Apparently, it's still available. Okay, that's fine. I mean, once again, we could determine exactly what happened simply by taking a look at the officer video. Why haven't we done that yet? Because apparently the officer video shows something that the Pelosi's and the mainstream media just don't want to share. Which leads me to another question. Why? What difference does it make? We're pretty sure it's just an allegation. He's innocent until proven guilty that David DePape hit Paul Pelosi in the head with a hammer. We still don't know why. But apparently it would be all caught on video. So one, why would David DePape plead not guilty? And why don't we already know? Now, the story does continue. And it does continue because Fox News is continuing it. The story today is NBC News' biggest stars, including at the Today Show, have remained silent about the ongoing drama surrounding correspondent Miguel Almaguer, whose November 4th report was retracted without explanation after it suggested Paul Pelosi may not have been in immediate danger when police first arrived the night he was assaulted. NBC News political director Chuck Todd, NBC News anchor Lester Holt, and Today hosts Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb. Is that how you say her name, Ellen? Anyway, have all refrained from calling on their employer to provide an explanation. They haven't issued any public shows of support for Almaguer either. Almaguer is a Los Angeles-based correspondent. He's been regularly on the scene of California's biggest news events since he joined NBC in 2009. He's collected an assortment of journalism accolades in his 2-decade career, including the Edward R. Murrow Award. From covering devastating earthquakes and wildfires to partaking in the network's Olympic coverage, he's become a familiar face and a voice to viewers of NBC's flagship programs Today and NBC Nightly News. But those same viewers have not seen Almaguer since he vanished from the public view after his Paul Pelosi report for Today. It was retracted on November 4th. Like I said, it was only available for a particle of a day. Almaguer reported to police who responded to the 911 call and said they did not realize it was Speaker Nancy Pelosi's residence and that Paul Pelosi opened the door himself but did not attempt to escape or declare an emergency before walking away from cops and back toward alleged attacker David DePape. Almaguer said nobody has any idea what Pelosi and DePape were doing for the 30 minutes before the police arrived. Oh, okay. NBC News retraced the stunning report, or retracted rather, the stunning report by that afternoon, scrubbing it from the internet. Almaguer, who's reportedly been suspended, has not appeared on air or posted anything to social media since. NBC News has refused to explain what was wrong about Almaguer's report, aside from a vague line that it didn't meet company standards. NBC News hasn't even admitted Almaguer is suspended with an on-the-record statement. And NBC, he's probably not suspended. He's probably on ice, which is different. An NBC News insider told Fox News Digital the word inside Rockefeller Center in New York is that Almaguer's source was biased, while others feel the report was halted because it didn't align with mainstream narratives. However, a separate report on NBC's local affiliate in San Francisco has since reported many of the same details that landed Almaguer in hot water. I think they had different sources, said an NBC Bay Area news source telling Fox News. Almaguer has not been mentioned on air since his stunning report was scrubbed. Are he and his producer suspended during an internal investigation? NBC's silence on the matter speaks volumes. That's a former senior NBC News executive who worked with Almaguer and told Fox News this week that before Almaguer was indeed suspended. Almaguer has not responded with a request for comment. And he probably won't either, because he'd probably like to keep his job. But again, why would his job be in jeopardy? Who, what, when, where, why, how? Report the news. I mean, seriously? Well, what is all of this? Anyway, a source with direct knowledge of what occurred said some NBC News digital staffers received a vague email informing them to remove Almaguer's video report from the website because it did not meet company standards. There was no reason given, the insider told Fox News. The whole thing just seems very strange because of the pulling of the video, then adding the editorial note, it definitely seems weird. Well, it definitely seems weird to me. I mean, is it really that big a deal? It just doesn't seem to want to go away. How about this? Let's stop lying. Okay? Let's stop lying. Let's stop letting politics dictate our editorial policy. And by the way, you can ask anybody that's been on this broadcast, any politician, right? The editorial policy of the Wells Report is inviolable. It's based on decades of broadcasting experience and watching people make really dumb moves and not following editorial policy that makes sense. And I just got to say this. You know, I'm not going to change for a politician's whims. And I don't know why NBC would. This is not difficult. It's not hard. Who, what, when, where, why, how? Report the story. Let the political chips fall where they may. But once again, our mainstream media, for whatever reason, has decided to abandon truth and choose sides. And there are actually people being harmed in this, Miguel Almaguer being chief on the list at this particular moment. Spineless people in power at NBC? I don't know that they're spineless, but they certainly are partisan. I mean, we care because this is a malfunction of the mainstream media. At least I care on this broadcast because it's essential that the mainstream media do their actual job instead of being a propaganda source for the Democrat Party. Don't you think? I mean, seriously. Well, let's see. Nancy's probably not very happy. She is definitely not amused with her husband's behavior recently. Yeah. Oh, Mike says they're spineless in that they don't do journalism. They bow to whomever. Well, as long as whomever happens to have a D beside their name, yeah, that seems to be the case. Man, when I was a kid, I watched John Chancellor on NBC News. There was no more credible news broadcast or news organization. But how did we get away from all of that? I guess it's because we just decided to teach people or just treat people like morons. Well, that has a short shelf life. And so I wanted to bring that up. Once again, is Almaguer suspended? What's he suspended for? Seems to me that he simply was reporting the story. And oh, by the way, NBC News is not exactly known for their amazing, stellar ability to source people who give them inside information. Just like any other news organization. These people, I'm pretty sure I know what it is. Here's what's going on. What happened is that NBC News went off at the mouth about a narrative that wasn't true. and they don't want to be embarrassed any further. Why? NBC News got caught red-handed, or excuse me, CNN News got caught red-handed. Everybody's been caught red-handed. ABC, CBS. I mean, everybody gets caught red-handed. Just be truthful. And why do we care if it's Paul Pelosi? I mean, okay, so he's very close to Democrat Party leadership. Well, what? We expect these people to not have real human being lives? Is that what this is all about? So anyway, it gets curiouser and curiouser, all right? It gets so curious that even the Immigration and Customs Enforcement is involved. That story comes up next. Stay where you are. This is me scratching my head, not because it itches, but because I can't figure out what's going on with this Pelosi story. Get a load of this. David DePape, by the way, is an illegal immigrant. He crashed the border from Canada. Okay? That puts him in the purview of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. He's a foreign national in custody in the United States. They get to talk to him, right? Wrong. ICE is disputing a claim by the San Francisco Sheriff's Office for why it was denied access to the Canadian illegal immigrant accused of attacking the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after the Sheriff's Office turned away a person presenting as an ICE officer because that particular ICE officer didn't have an ID. What? ICE sources said had told Fox News earlier this month the San Francisco Sheriff's Office had denied ICE officials the ability to interview David DePape. who the Department of Homeland Security had confirmed was an illegal immigrant who had initially crossed into the U.S. from Mexico on a visitor visa in 2008. DePape is facing charges of attempted murder, residential burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, elder abuse, false imprisonment of an elder, and threats to a public official and her family. He has pled not guilty. San Francisco is one of the number of jurisdictions that has sanctuary policies that forbid or limit cooperation with ICE. You know what I'm trying to figure out? I'm trying to figure out how come this guy wasn't immediately released. Oh, that's right. He hit the wrong guy in the head with a hammer. Oh, okay. I mean, there are people who are here illegally who have run over Americans and killed them. DUI, what have you. What happens to them? Why, by gosh, they're deported. Do they go to jail? No. But they're deported. Uh-huh. Do they come back? I've got to catch a train. Of course you do. See it. Anyway, so it does lead to a certain level of karma debt that someone, specifically Nancy Pelosi, stood for all those years, having dealt with standing up for illegal immigration into the nation. And when Kate Steinle was killed by an illegal immigrant who stole a federal officer's weapon, I mean, it was like, what happened to that guy? I don't know that he's still in the country. I don't know that he's not in the country. I'm just being honest. But, you know, here we go. I guess he's what? I hate to say this, but is he the wrong race? Is that the issue? Anyway, by the way, yeah, the MAGA thing comes back into that anyway. The sheriff's office told Fox News last week that a person presenting themselves as an immigration official arrived at the county jail seeking access to DePape for an interview. However, they said the person was denied access due to a lack of government credentials, instead saying they only presented a business card. However, a spokesperson said that it is the policy of the office to refuse ICE employees entry into the jail if they're engaged in civil immigration enforcement, meaning they would likely have been denied access even if they had presented a legitimate credential. Well, why didn't they just stand up for their sanctuary policies then? Do you see this? It's like there is an envelope of lying that descends over Paul Pelosi. It must be completely understood and adhered to. Whenever you talk about Paul Pelosi in any way, lie. Why? An ICE official has since told Fox Digital that an ICE agent, an enforcement and removal operations deportation officer, not only attempted to conduct an in-person interview with DePape, but also had his government ID. The officer identified herself and presented her government-issued credentials bearing her photo, name, position, and organization. San Francisco County Jail denied the DO's request to interview DePape. In response to that statement by ICE, SFSO said it stood by its own statement and reiterated its version of events. John Fear, former ICE chief of staff during the Trump administration, said it was standard practice for ICE to interview jailed illegal immigrants to determine the next steps in their immigration case, and that this can provide ICE with important information. Well, that's why they won't let him talk to him. They won't let DePape talk with ICE because, well, an illegal alien crossing from Mexico hit Paul Pelosi in the forehead or wherever he got hit. ICE is limited to what it can see in its files. The person's circumstances may have changed since their last interaction with the federal government. Is he still an illegal immigrant? That's Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Hello. When you're dealing with our electronic systems, ICE is seeing the fingerprints of an alien arrested by local law enforcement, but a face-to-face interview can confirm a lot of things. And the truth is, with any law enforcement situation, you never know what you're going to uncover during an interview. Yeah, it's like illegal immigrants or a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But by the way, that was not a racial statement. It was a statement by Forrest Gump. Okay, just Yeah. DHS confirmed it had issued a detainer, a request that law enforcement hold on to an illegal immigrant on release so that ICE can take them into custody on DePape. The issue of whether ICE can interview DePape is separate from whether the detainer will be authorized or adhered to. Does anybody have any idea what's going on in this story? Is it really this difficult? I mean, think about the implications. Okay, I've thought about the implications and I don't care. I get that. Why is everybody being so hush-hush? I don't understand. This is hour 2 of the Wells Report. Hour number 3 is next. Stay there. Alrighty then. I mean, am I really asking for the sun, the moon, and the stars just by having people tell the truth? north to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly and fairly, truthfully. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, that's my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and so we debate. You can do that a couple of different ways. You can call 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Or you can take part in the chat room, rollicking as usual on this Friday afternoon. Gary was talking about the nature of the hammer. No, it wasn't pink, and no, it wasn't a toy. It was a real hammer, from what I understand. We were just talking about Paul Pelosi in the last hour. It's a story that won't go away, that won't be reported truthfully. Anybody that does report the story truthfully gets suspended. I mean, ICE can't talk to this illegal immigrant. The story goes on and on and on. Okay, it'll be great when Pelosi and Biden become forgotten. Yeah. Don't you hate it when a name comes up you didn't like and you have to say, thanks a lot? I don't know where that came from. I really expect nothing else from the mainstream media. The very name Pelosi implies it will not be covered by them. Trite but true statement. Rules for thee, but not for me. JD, will you be broadcasting next week? Yes. I absolutely will be broadcasting next week, but I'll probably take Thursday and Friday off. Okay. The story's a rabbit hole for sure, but yeah, what? The thing about that story is just, why not just tell the truth? Why not? I just don't get it. I really can't get it. Anyway, that was last hour. If you want to know more, listen to last hour. This hour, something far, far more disturbing about another human being involved in a private situation with a third human being, or excuse me, a second human being that turned out to be a rapist. Alicia Gonzalez was sitting in her bedroom in her dorm room at Marshall University. She was wearing a sweatpants, long sleeve shirt, no makeup, hair fastened in a French braid. It was approaching afternoon. She didn't want to be alone with this guy who was in her room. But then her friend who was with her left, and so she was alone with him. And he started talking about inappropriate things regarding his sexual past. She remembers the excuses she made, plausibly deniable, increasingly desperate for the doors unlocked. My roommate will be home soon. In my religion, we don't have sex on Mondays. Oh. The perpetrator, fellow Marshall student Joseph Chase Harden, was more than 6 feet tall, weighed 250 pounds, was aggressive and undeterred by hearing the word no, by getting scratched with her nails. She made every effort to get away. Lawyers would later tell her that she should have screamed louder, but it was difficult with his hands around her neck. Afterward, blood dripped down her leg, stained the comforter, trailed to the bathroom, colored the toilet. He just stood up like everything was fine. He literally walked to my sink, cleaned himself off, and he put his clothes on and then came up to him and said, the very last thing he said was 17. In other words, the number of people that he had liaisons with. When he left, Gonzalez did what women were taught to do, the things that can feel impossible to do. She preserved the moment, preserved her body. She sent a group text to her closest friends, told them something had happened. They needed to come right away. Her friends arrived like detectives, bagging evidence, taking pictures. They told Gonzalez it was time to go to the hospital. They helped her back into her original clothes, packed up extra ones. They grabbed a male friend as an escort. The nurses administered a rape kit, which felt like a reviolation. That's got to be horrible. The police came. Gonzalez said she could not speak. The next morning, Gonzalez walked with her friends to the Marshall University Police Department, filed an official report. The police informed Lisa Martin, the school's director of student conduct. By the way, in case you're wondering, under circumstances like that, the best thing to do, and I know this is kind of weird, but The best thing you can do under circumstances like that when you're being questioned is to get 2 sleep cycles done before you start talking. And apparently that's pretty much what she did. She got at least 1 sleep cycle. You got to have 2, but that's just the way it goes. Anyway, what came next, according to Gonzalez and her lawyers, would represent her in a civil suit against the university was a litany of decisions that demonstrated Marshall's carelessness toward her rape, her trauma, her education, in a case study of how, 5 decades after the passage of Title IX banning sexual discrimination in education, schools continue to fail women. By the way, Marshall University is scrambling on this story. They're doing all kinds of things that should have been done much sooner. In the U.S., 1 in 5 college women report being sexually assaulted during their time at school. The trauma of these violations ripples across their education. Title IX was supposed to address it. In addition to mandating equity in academics and athletics, the federal government also requires that schools crack down on sexual harassment and sexual violence. Guidance from the U.S. Department of Education in 2011 crystallized that mandate. Schools must designate Title IX coordinators. They must immediately investigate allegations of rape, stalking, dating violence. They must offer accommodations to victims and levy sanctions on perpetrators. They must ensure that students feel safe on campus and can obtain an education free from gender-based harassment or violence. With Hardin, Marshall followed the letter of the law but missed the spirit. By the time the school finally expelled Hardin for sexual misconduct, Gonzalez transferred to another university. 2 additional students accused him of rape. Our academy, the university system, is as screwed up as it has ever been. It's as screwed up as it's ever been. And there are huge, egregious violations on both sides of this. Men accused of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, sexual assault, and are innocent, and so on and so on. Duke Lacrosse immediately pops up in my mind, along with some others. And all of this leads USA Today, which, by the way, who gave us this story, which leads them to say that, hey, we're still failing women. Adriana Crossing thought her case was straightforward. A doctoral student at Michigan State, she'd grown increasingly alarmed. A male student's romantic interest in her escalated into obsession. He pulled her phone number from an emergency contact list, messaged her repeatedly, his persistent requests for dates, late-night calls and messages, and an email describing his imagined future with her prompted her to report the matter to campus officials and police and file a restraining order. Michigan State launched an investigation in March of 2019 under the federal Title IX, which bans sexual discrimination. The case crawled along for 10 months, during which investigators interviewed 2 witnesses. The investigation found him responsible for sexual harassment and stalking. When officials asked what sanction she felt was appropriate, Crossing recommended expulsion, saying she feared her and other women's safety, and the student needed to be held accountable. Instead, Michigan State placed him on disciplinary probation to be punished only if he violated school rules again. He graduated later that year with a master's degree. You can't make this up. In human resources. It was a slap in the face, said Crossing, for the investigation just to drag on forever with no end in sight and then abrupt end. And there's nothing that's called re-traumatizing. And so I have some questions that I want to ask. Back in the olden days, there used to be men's universities and women's universities. That was broken down in the 60s. And suddenly coeducation was the rule of the day. And so what you ended up with is a bunch of high school students being propelled immediately into college and being expected to act like reasoned adults. And since they had never actually gone out into the real world and actually done anything in the real world, so they had no idea about real world reality, these people continued their adolescence into college. And this is what happens. And what I want to ask you is this. I want to ask you, is coeducation a failure in America's academy? Is it a failure? I have to say it is. I have to say it is. Now, make no mistake. I mean, even in single gender colleges around the nation, which, by the way, are impossible now, I suppose, based on LGBTQ political pressure. But even then, people were sexually assaulted. And it has to do, once again, with this notion that somehow these children that are prolonging their adolescence in college are somehow immune from reality in the academic system. Now, we don't know the details on any of this. We don't. Evidently, the legal trouble that Ms. Garcia her attacker is facing is serious, and I hope so. But once again, we find ourselves in a position where the university system, the educators of the so-called best and brightest, is failing at every turn. It's not education, it's indoctrination. It's allowing these kids, once again, children, who are not complete, half-baked cookies, salad days, all of these things, signing away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt to get a piece of paper without any real knowledge of real world life. I mean, Gary Abshire says that college is actually 13th grade. Yeah, 13th and 14th, if you ask me. But how did this happen? How did we find ourselves in this situation? Well, we found ourselves in this situation because, once again, politics poisons everything it touches. And politics is part and parcel of the American Academy. And what it does is it renders everyone as a subject of indoctrination. Those who refuse get worse grades. Those people getting worse grades end up not getting big jobs. And this perpetuates over and over. Is when you start thinking about the indoctrination, when you start thinking about the degrees that are valueless, when you start thinking about the millions of people that are buried in student debt because they can't get a job good enough to be able to pay those debts because their education is valueless, when you start thinking about sexual assaults on campus and everybody being screwed up from one end to the other, there are a lot of traumas on both sides of this. When you start thinking about all this, I've asked this question before. Is the American Academy worth anything? And if so, what? Telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. This is The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What's going on with the academy? What's happening in the America's universities? The statistics are stark. Let's see. Universities suspended 1 out of every 12,400 students enrolled each year for sexual misconduct. And then, of course, Yvonne, rightly so, points out what happened to all the cases where female students accused men of rape after they had regrets, after they had consensual sex. The men were unfairly outed without any proof. This lady can't get any help whatsoever. I mean, I guess these are the best and brightest there at the beginning of their lives. Let's not ruin their lives. What about the lives they ruin otherwise? You can separate men, and you cannot separate men and women nowadays because they don't know what a man or a woman is anymore, including an associate justice of the Supreme Court who does not know what a woman is. Unbelievable. And then Yvonne says parenting is the major failure for our kids today. I would agree. Mark Greer points out he lived in a co-ed dorm at SHSU. There were a few problems back then. That was in the 70s. Yeah. Yeah, even at gender-specific schools, there are issues like this. Let's see. What else? I received enough higher education to get my foot in the door and went from there. I busted my butt in school so I could stop at some point. Yeah. Or there isn't a job for somebody with an underwater basket weaving degree. Yeah. I didn't have time for shenanigans. I picked a hard degree at Texas Tech. I had to spend spring breaks studying. Lubbock School, we got our ROI on that. Management Information Systems. Yeah. And so all I can say is that what's happening here and what can be done to fix it? Is there anything? Is there anything? They've really backed themselves into a corner here. All of this vaunted Title IX stuff. All this Title IX stuff all goes into the dumper as soon as guys who identify as females start competing in athletic competitions. Seriously? I mean, and then, of course, when you start talking about false charges, Brett Kavanaugh, another associate justice of the Supreme Court, was almost run off the road. And if it wasn't for the fact that this legal nerd kept a calendar of everything he did every day. Who does that? I never did that. Hell, I'm 64. I can barely run a calendar now. I'm serious. Anyway, if it wasn't for that calendar, he would have been absolutely canceled, absolutely thrown away, and so on. So here we are. And you were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for an undergraduate degree? That's what we're doing? I mean, I understand a college education is important. I also understand that in my particular field of endeavor, a college degree was, at that time, not valuable because the radio industry was changing virtually every day. You were on the leading edge of communication technology. That was it. And you could only learn it by doing it. Same thing with the space program. My dad had an English degree and ended up being in mission control in Houston, Texas. Why? Because he was on the leading edge of technology. His degree got him a job, but his job gave him a life. And by the way, I don't think he spent more than $5,000 or $6,000 on his degree. And by the way, he went to the University of Oregon. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Stick around. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary, not the news, and we debate. The debate room is going on as we speak. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. While we're on the subject of, shall we say, overly entitled college-educated kids, let me get to a couple of things on the chat room. Gary says, these punks today don't understand a 4-year degree just means that they're potty trained. Your real education has just begun. It's true. I was blessed with a 20-year career at Alcon, still thanking God for my education and my career. Indeed. So let's talk about Elon Musk, who is one of those guys that I believe he was the guy behind PayPal. He is a billionaire. And he is not just that, but he is one of those guys that has this amazingly talented predilection of saying the exact right thing at the exact right time, whether you want to hear it or not. He has Twitter, he has SpaceX, he has Tesla. He has consistently confronted this culture of mollycoddling that led to a generation called, they were called the, why am I having this mental block at this particular moment? Anyway, he led to a generation of kids that believe that they know everything that they need to know and are millennials. Thank you. It led to a generation of millennials. Well, they're in the workforce now, and they are overly entitled, and they demand answers to questions that are none of their business. Elon Musk purchased Twitter lock, stock, and barrel. It's a private corporation. He's the boss. He can do with his businesses what he chooses to do with his businesses. And when you're in a situation where you are, say, for example, entitled with a college degree in computers or what have you, you find yourself working at Twitter, and the bubble of mollycoddling that begins in these liberal universities or liberal-esque universities that then leads to a group of people that then go into the workforce, that mollycoddling continues with the political aspects surrounding Twitter. Twitter was one of the major corporations that had absolutely no problem with violating the First Amendment virtually every day, tens of thousands of times every day. And Elon Musk said, there ought to be an international town square where people can say what they want to, up to within reason. And so he saw that and bought the company, and is making dramatic changes to it. You don't get to work at home anymore. You have to come to the office. You don't come to the office, resignation accepted. All manner of things just like this. SpaceX, for example, say they got fired for speaking up about Elon Musk. Yeah. 20 engineers were invited to a meeting hosted at headquarters of the rocket manufacturer SpaceX. The subject of the conversation, the company's founder and chief executive, Elon Musk. The day before, the company had moved to fire 5 employees who had written a letter calling on SpaceX to condemn the harmful Twitter behavior of Mr. Musk, who had used the social network to make light of a news report that SpaceX had settled a sexual harassment claim against him. Several of the engineers filed into the meeting expecting a sympathetic ear. Some managers and executives indicated that they did not condone Mr. Musk's behavior. Yeah. But at the meeting that had not been previously reported, it quickly became heated, according to 2 SpaceX employees. John Edwards, the vice president leading the meeting, characterized the letter as an extremist act and declared that the writers had been fired for distracting the company and taking on Mr. Musk. And they're just stunned by it. My gosh, they were fired because they spoke up against the boss of the company that he owns, lock, stock, and barrel. Yeah, it's got government, it does have government contracts, but the contract does not specify that SpaceX comport to Democrat ideology. The contract specifies that it build rockets and spacecraft, which it does. And now Twitter is having this problem. And a bunch of them have quit. Elon Musk asked workers to decide by yesterday evening whether they wanted to continue at Twitter. He told employees that they will, quote, need to be extremely hardcore to build a breakthrough Twitter 2.0. Working long hours in a high-intensity environment would be part of that push. He asked his employees to hit yes on a link in an email if they wanted to be part of the new Twitter by 5 p.m. Employees who did not reply yes would receive 3 months severance. Bye now. A pool of employees that resigned as of Thursday evening, according to the report, citing unidentified current and former employees. Internal communication channels were filled with an emoji signaling a salute, an apparent symbol of leaving the company. Hundreds of Twitter employees appeared to have made the decision to leave. Last month, Musk completed a $44 billion takeover of the social media platform, and he's laid off thousands of employees. Yeah, indeed. Not only have they done that, but other big tech corporations are following suit. Facebook, etc. As of ahead of the deadline, Musk tried to persuade some employees to stay at the company. According to multiple reports, the billionaire also appeared to soften his stance on working from home. Regarding remote work, all that's required for approval is that your manager take responsibility for ensuring that you're making an excellent contribution. Okay, so he gave a little bit, and people quit anyway. But that's okay, because Twitter is overstaffed. By the way, Musk followed that email with another saying, any manager who falsely claims that someone reporting to them is doing excellent work or that a given role is essential, whether remote or not, will be exited from the company. And then, of course, there were all kinds of basic interferences from mainstream media and politicians and so on and so on and so on, up to and including a Connecticut senator saying, we've got to look into this Twitter purchase. No, you don't. It's none of your business. Elon Musk owns Twitter. It's a private company. You don't get to step into a private company's business. Buzz off. And so what ended up happening is that Twitter reportedly notified employees it would temporarily close its offices and cut badge access until Monday. The move comes after numerous employees chose to leave the company following the ultimatum issued by Elon Musk yesterday. They'd have to choose to work long hours at high intensity or leave. Hundreds of employees were estimated to have quit. Musk assured on his Twitter account the best people are staying, as they would. The ones that know how to work. The ones that care about the company. The rest of these people are taking themselves out because they're useless. They're useless whether they're drawing a paycheck or not. And that is true. Excuse me, I'm going to take a slug of cold coffee. Yes. Thank you. The resignations included many engineers who were responsible for preventing service outages, fixing bugs. A source told Reuters that the version of the app used by employees began to slow Thursday night. Since taking over, Musk eliminated roughly half the company's workforce. In a memo to staff, Musk wrote that employees will need to be extremely hardcore, and remaining on Twitter was going to be a serious and difficult business. By the way, security officers, according to Reuters, started kicking some employees out of the office Thursday night. Okay. And let's see, what else? Let me get back to this. Anyway, yeah. By the way, there is a proposed class action lawsuit, in case you're wondering, A lawsuit from a former Twitter engineering manager filed in San Francisco federal court said that the Musk mandate that employees stop working remotely and put in long hours at high intensity violates the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay. Twitter's already facing a proposed class action lawsuit claiming it violated federal law by laying off half the company's workforce earlier this month without proper notice. I've been laid off a bunch. I never got proper notice. It was a meeting. You showed up. You were gone. Sometimes you got a paycheck. Sometimes you got a severance paycheck, and sometimes you didn't. There is a banner jabbing at Musk, low-angle sign with a logo on the facade. I don't know what the sign said, et cetera, et cetera. And so what you've done is you've got a guy who is going to run his company like Americans run companies. There you go. Work or don't. What do people say? What do people say? Well, they say this. Let's see. Let me see. What is this? Let's see. Did I get something wrong regarding PayPal? What was, where did Elon Musk get his money? I mean, it was one of the, it wasn't PayPal? What was it? What did Elon Musk get his money for? It doesn't make any difference to the story, but there you go. Let's see. Alan, weighing in on college, says college is not necessarily overrated. It depends on the university one's attend and the degree they attend. Yeah. That's why I support the entrepreneur, the risk taker. They deserve the huge wealth they created. They created jobs, general philanthropy. Government needs to stay out of it. I agree. I love it. The snowflakes quit Twitter. Did they not notice that Google, Amazon, and several other snowflake-friendly companies have also laid off thousands of their employees? Let's see. How do you make a small fortune? You make a small fortune by spending a big fortune. Let's see. Alan then goes on to say the best people are not staying. The best people will easily find employment at a more stable company. You know, Alan, I'll say this. Not always. A company doesn't always have the most talented people. A company has the people that know how to work. It may take a little longer to come up with brilliant ideas, but they come up with them. And the people that are actually sticking around, like I said before, actually care about the company. As far as I'm concerned, they are the best people. That is all there is. And this also brings up something else. It also brings up something else. And that's this. When it comes to this kind of thing, the best people not staying, it's a simple case of what kind of company do you want? Do you want a company that is filled with people who believe in it, that want to see it succeed? Those are the people that you want. Those are the people you have to have. And by the way, all these people leaving Twitter, oh, they'll all get great jobs because they have great credentials and blah, 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 blah. Good engineers will have no problem catching on with other companies. Really? Would you hire a guy that just left his other company because he had a disagreement with the boss, went public about it, and that's gross insubordination, by the way? Would you hire a guy like that? How long is it going to be before those guys come up with problems with their new company? Not long. Not long. All I can say is that you have to have a workforce that cares. You have to have a workforce that wants to work for the company. I love being a company guy. I love being the member of a team. I love being somebody that the company can depend on to do the right thing, to come up with the right idea, to be able to execute a good plan, and so on and so on. I love doing that. I can assure you, with personal experience, that making the leap from one of those guys to the guy trying to grow that kind of culture, that is a tough mother. It is not easy. It's just not easy. It's just not simple. And the people in universities and so on and so forth, like John Wooden had a hair code. You know, it was one of those things. One of his players was a guy that just didn't want to cut his hair. Coach Wooden said, "We're really going to miss you." Where are those college professors? Where are those college people that teach actual life? I don't know. I don't have any idea. Then Alan says something that is really very, very true. Alan says no one should ever care too deeply about a company because a company does not care about the average worker. You are disposable. Always look out for yourself. More about that in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-999-4499. Alan says that John Wooden ran a very shady program at UCLA. No, he didn't. Money and inducements that were doled out to players to get them to attend the university were legendary. The only thing legendary about John Wooden was what he did with the UCLA basketball program. Bill Walton was the player that he invited to leave the team because he wouldn't cut his hair. And he was serious. Okay? Just saying. It's amazing how people will denigrate somebody based on success just to be argumentative. Alan said, don't ever care too much about a company because the company doesn't care about the average worker. A lot of companies don't. I've worked for a lot of them that didn't. It's true. I also worked with one that did. Capital Broadcasting. I was in Orlando, Florida. I worked for Jim Goodman. And no one could be named more appropriately. The guys running one of the radio stations decided that they could replace me because I'd done all the heavy lifting and I had brought the radio station to number one, and that's the way they do it. They go out and get a hired gun like me, and we clean up the town. And once the town's cleaned up, they say, I know we promised you the sun and the moon and the stars if you were ever to get to number one, and I know you've done that, but well, you know what? We think you wear the wrong color socks, so we're blowing you out. And that's what they did. Jim Goodman didn't know anything about it. I would have never reached out to Mr. Goodman had it not been for the fact that the company I was working for interfered with my next job that comported with a no-compete clause because it was far enough away, and they got in the way and they ruined the job for me. And I started hammering them. And I finally called Mr. Goodman on the phone and I said, look, we're about to get into a fight. And I don't want to fight with you because you're a great, great guy. And I really appreciate working with you. And he told me, you know, these guys never told me any of this. They said you were just going to leave. Remember that company man thing? I found the company I wanted to work with. And it was ruined by a bunch of guys that were more about their egos and more about trying to make a bonus than they were about winning radio. So I understand what you're saying. Did that kill my mercenary instincts? Or excuse me, my love of company, my company man instincts? No. If I was working for Twitter and didn't like what was going on, I'd simply work as hard as I possibly could, find another position, write a glowing resignation letter, and leave. And I did that more often than not. But when you find a company that has an actual mission, nothing is going to be perfect. It can either be the best job you ever had, or it could be the worst job you ever had, all based on your perceptions. And that's true. That's true. And so I hope that you find a company like that. And I often think about, I muse about the things that I would be able to do for Elon Musk. I'd love to work for SpaceX. I'd like to be the guy that's talking down the line about the next launch. I'd like to be able to contribute my creativity, my ability to come up with solutions to that company. Twitter, not so much, because I want to do something that's exciting. I want to do something that's difficult. I want to do something that's on the edge of technology. SpaceX isn't necessarily on the edge of technology. They're basically recreating what NASA did in the 50s and 60s. But it's a brave new world for the private entrepreneur who's trying to do things that only nation states have ever been able to accomplish. I like that. So I've thought about sending him a resume. I have. I may still do it because I still got mileage left. I still have it to go. And SpaceX is in Texas. That's almost perfect, isn't it? Look, if you are young, if you're a millennial, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, listen to a guy that has been there and done that. Alan makes a good point. Don't fall in love with a company because it's going to break your heart. It's true. But until that day, make sure you work at the company you think you're working at. Make it the best company you've ever worked with. Contribute everything you have. And when it breaks your heart, as Ellen says, well, move on in peace with a smile on your face. Stand up straight when you walk out the door. Because what you've got is valuable. People who complain their way out of a business find trouble at their next one because why would I hire you if you complained your way out of the place you were just at? I've done that too. By the way, Alan also points out that Alan Holmes, make that Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, gets to go to jail for 11 years for defrauding her clients and her customers. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate your contributions to this broadcast, Alan. I do. I truly do. Thanks very much for being a part of this. Yvonne, Mike, everybody that listens to this broadcast. And, of course, Miss Sylvie. Happy birthday, darling. I'm sorry I missed it on Monday. Thanks very much for being a part of this family, this Wells Report. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. I will see you on Monday. Take good care. And all righty then. This has been a tough week. Boy, it's been a tough week. Man. Listen, all y'all. Alcon IT got ruined by Lockheed. Strays they brought in. We had FDA and ISO covered. We didn't need the defense contractor paradigm overkill. I bowed up. I defended Alcon. I lost. Yep, Gary. It does happen. But you got to work there, didn't you? You got to be able to say, I worked at Alcon. We were a small town. It was a family. A lot of people never get to say that. Never get to say that. All right. Thanksgiving next week. Have yourself a great one. Love all y'all. Good night. Peace, love, joy.